Welcome to week 9. So before we get into the material for this week, as we've done in the past, I would just like to provide a little bit of an overview as to what we're going to be doing and how it fits in with the larger goals of the course and what specifically you're going to be mapping out this week. So last week was really about getting your argument in shape, and now we're going to turn to stylizing the language and delivery. So as we enter this last chunk of the course, this last chunk of the persuasive speech, I want you to think about how we've moved in terms of the nature of our preparation, but not really the goal of our public speaking course. So in the impromptu, you minimized your prep in order to speak for the ear. And in the informative, you worked from an outline in order to master those complex details, but deliver that information in a way that was easy for an audience to follow along with. And now we're really adding a significant manuscript aspect to this speech. So the manner in which you're presenting the speech or preparing for the speech has changed, but the goal certainly hasn't. It's still very much about writing and speaking for the ear. Of course, now you have more experience. You've done a lot more speaking. You've analyzed more speeches. And speech writing can be very tough because you have to find a way to prepare something visually that's going to work for an audience of auditors. And we see a lot of this actually in the Roman tradition, kind of how we've done our various speech assignments. So in the classical tradition, specifically in the Roman tradition, we will find a distinction between low, middle, and grand styles of oratory. So low style would be colloquial speech, just very plain spoken. Middle speech would probably be now more what we consider professional type speaking. And then grand oratory or high oratory is much closer to political oratory. Certainly when people think about the speeches that they love, they're probably talking more about grand oratory. I Have a Dream is a great example of sort of high oratory, grand oratory. And as we've moved through the course, we've kind of tried to touch on various aspects of these. So even though we're still trying to remain focused on the oral mode, the impromptu, for example, was about being clear and being simple, but it was pretty plain spoken. The idea in terms of minimizing your prep was that you were speaking rather plainly, colloquially. As we moved into the informative speech, we sort of addressed more deliberately word choice and how you're going to present complex information. So that was probably closer to a sort of a mixed or middle style. And then this persuasive speech certainly has some middle elements, but also has parts that are more in this grand tradition. So how you prepared these speeches also changed. In the impromptu, it was a very brief outline. In the informative, it was a more elaborate outline. And in the persuasive, it might have a full manuscript or significant portions of the speech manuscript. But we've increased the challenge as we've moved up from low, middle to a grand style. But once again, the goal has remained the same, being able to speak in a clear fashion, in a motivational fashion, but above all, to be able to speak in a fashion that is easy for an audience of listeners to follow along with. So what we're going to be doing this week is really getting into this oratorical tradition, really getting into this sense of how you can tap into some of the power of grand oratory. We're going to begin the week by talking about strategic language use. And once we've got an idea of sort of the vocabulary, the value vocabulary you're using in your persuasive speech, we'll shift to stylistic devices, stylistic language, how you can write in a sort of a grander style. And then finally, we'll shift into delivery, specifically thinking about how to deliver a grand style in a way that sounds good, capturing the good writing that you've engaged in and making sure it translates to an actual speaking encounter. We'll also end by talking through some other warm-ups and projection and vocal health as well. So that's what we've got in store for this penultimate week. We've got one more week of material, but this is the last week that really gets us to the point where you're going to be working on your persuasive speech. And of course, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about, if you so choose, you can always upload a speech and receive some peer feedback. But that gives you just a general sense of where we're going in general in the course and specifically in this week.